Hello, this is Sheridan. In this presentation, I'm going to walk through all of the stages and the development of communication from early oral communication to written communication, then print, social media, and eventually just the world we live in today. Gaining a further knowledge of how we have evolved through communication and how it influences our relationships and our culture is the best way that we can learn about our history and apply it to future communication styles and the way that we choose to communicate with others. Communication is truly the best way for us to form bonds with one another. It helps us make sense of the world and participate in our culture. Duck and McMahon have emphasized continuously that communication is really not an option. It's something that humans are doing 24/7 when we're not thinking about it and when we are thinking about it. Communication gives us meaning, and it also gives sense to our relationships. As humans, we rely heavily on trust, and in order to trust one another, we have to communicate and be vulnerable and also show empathy to one another. That's how we are able to let go and trust that we are safe with other people, and communication plays a huge role in that. That leads us into how oral communication started in the first place. In the early days, communication was completely oral. There was no social media or connection through the internet or text messages. People relied solely on the spoken language, face-to-face contact, and shared memory. This is where storytelling comes in. Storytelling and repetition and gatherings are what kept people's history alive and gave them further knowledge. People found meaning in their social interactions, and being present with one another was essential because nothing was written down yet, so that's how they shared information with one another. Because there was no writing and no written form of knowledge, people relied purely on storytelling. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that in our own personal lives. For me personally, family members that have passed are kept alive by the stories that we tell of them. For people in the early days, storytelling was the only way to hold their memory. It's human nature to forget things and to forget important details, but when we can share them with one another, it's almost as if it's written in stone, even though it wasn't. They were able to hold one another accountable and recall all of their historical memories. This created trust and meaning between all of these people. The development of human writing would change communication forever. Early writing forms such as hieroglyphics were a way that people could store information outside of their brains without telling other people. As I mentioned before, a lot of them relied on speaking with one another and holding each other accountable for their memories. Hieroglyphics allowed for people to write their words in stone, holding them accountable and making sure that their words were credible. This form of writing meant that knowledge could now last beyond just a single lifetime. We still have hieroglyphics present in our current day society. With the development of the alphabet, writing was made easier and literacy was something that more people could access. This encouraged thinking, and it made people want to strive to learn something new. Ong describes writing as a technology that changed how humans think, learn, and interact with one another. Instead of people just relying solely on oral communication, we could now record information permanently. With the alphabet and these new forms of writing, knowledge could be spread to much further distances, allowing for more people to have access to this new way of writing and thinking. Books and manuscripts were another huge evolution. Even though books took a very long time to create and it was such a slow process, they were highly desired. And because of the high desire and the slow production rate, books were extremely rare, and most of the time, religious institutions were the ones that managed the written knowledge. Manuscripts were very difficult to get your hands on, which I personally think is why they were so highly desired. They were essentially a rarity, and who doesn't want in on that? Because books were such a rarity and of high demand, people needed to figure out a new way for mass production. This is how the Gutenberg Press made its appearance. The Gutenberg Press mass-produced newspapers, pamphlets, and books, which allowed for a much larger audience to gain knowledge. Originally, it was that only higher up groups were able to gain further knowledge, but because of the Gutenberg Press and the mass production of books, pamphlets, and newspapers, knowledge could travel further to lower class groups. This provided an amazing equal opportunity for every single class group to gain further knowledge. Because of the invention of the printing press and the expansion of information becoming widely accessible, Duck and McMahon highlight that print culture supported political change, religious reform, and scientific development. With books, newspapers, and printed documents being able to spread ideas faster and to wider audiences, this marked the beginning of a new mass communication that would essentially shape Western society. Even if it wasn't the intention, the more knowledge people gained, the more opinionated they were, and it came out. The uneducated were now educated, and they were able to form their own opinions and debate on them. As our printing evolved, so did our education. Communication became an academic field in the 1900s. People started to study how messages were shared and how they would influence others in their relationships. Psychology, sociology, and public speaking were all brought together to further evolve the world of communication. And while in certain situations, such as the Gutenberg Press, where more knowledge means more chaos, in this case, it was actually more knowledge means more evolution. Multiple fields coming together, we were able to broaden the knowledge and further expand the world of communication. This then led us into long-distance communication, which I personally think was one of the biggest advancements in the world of communication. The development of the telephone would completely change the world of communication forever, and I personally am very grateful for that. The telephone connected people at far distances in real time. This meant that people could still continue to strengthen their personal relationships through communication if they had a telephone, or if they had access to a telephone. Think of our current day society and how much knowledge we gain from the news. With the development of early broadcasting, people now had the ability to gain knowledge from inside their home. People would gather together to watch television and listen to the radio. This broadcast platform was nationwide, therefore people were able to gain knowledge from anywhere. Radios and television truly changed the world of entertainment. And on to the next it was. Then we were introduced to computers and the internet. The modern digital era introduced a new form of communication. Duck and McMahon would describe the digital communication as immediate, interactive, and multimodal. This combined images, text, audio, and even video. Within the computer and the internet, we also have access to social media platforms. Social media platforms are just another way for people to share constant information immediately online. People could create online identities and form relationships even at a distance. This truly formed how we socialize, how we learn, and how we participate with people in different communities. Social media still has a huge impact on our lives, even in the year of 2025. Social media allowed people to share content about their life. They could choose to share as much of their life or as little of their life as they wanted to, but even from a distance, we could stay updated. I personally find social media to be so exciting and extremely beneficial in today's day and age. With social media, worldwide communication was instantly accessible. And it still is today, and it has evolved even further. Now we have so much access to the internet that it can be very overwhelming. The massive influx of information sometimes doesn't allow for proper evaluation of everything. We aren't able to fully grasp all of the information because there's too much coming in at once. We then also face the issue of real versus fake social media. In our current society, we are hyperfixated on image, the way we appear to others, and our social media appearance. Sometimes it can be very difficult when we see harshly edited images online and we think that's our beauty standard. My parents taught me from a very young age that communication is essential to any successful relationship. The more we communicate with one another, the more we relate to one another, empathize, and build trust. My husband and I put a strong emphasis on communication in our marriage. We've found that personally, the more we communicate with each other, the more we can understand one another and be on the same page. Communication is also essential in relationships that are long distance. For example, my mom and I live in different states, but we make an effort to call each other every day to communicate, touch base, and make sure we are on the same page. This strengthens our relationship and keeps us connected. Overall, communication has evolved greatly over the past hundreds of years, from written language to printing to social media and what we've evolved it into today. Even though communication has changed so much, the end goal will always be the same: communication with one another, furthering relationships, and gaining further knowledge. The more we study the history of communication, the more we can understand the patterns of the past that may appear again in the future. Communication will forever be an essential and something that everyone takes part in. Therefore, it will continue to grow and evolve as we grow and evolve. I truly believe that the world of communication has just started. Thank you for listening, and here are my references.